This is Space Cat's Peace Turtles, the unofficial podcast for Fantasy Flight's Twilight Imperium. Episode 35, First Round Strategies, Emirates of Hacan. Music by Ben Prunty, featuring Matt Martins and Hunter Donaldson.
All right, Matt, so this is what I want you to do for how the episode starts. So it's exterior. There are cats, right? And they're meowing, right? And one of the cats is wearing a red beret. And it's like, is it a beret? And then one of the other cats is like, no, it's a shroud. But it's like, on TI3, it looked like a beret. And then there's like one cat.
His name's Porky. And Porky, he's a real go-getter. He lives on this sand dune planet. And he comes out of his house, and his uncle starts yelling at him.
No. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is what it is. There is a god king of Arrakis, and his name is Paul the cat. and the thing about Paul the cat is he is a cat,
Yes.
but he rides around on a giant sand cat.
I used to work on this show with two people named Ben and Jessa, and I could not be in the same room as them and not think of the Bene Gesserit.
Have you ever even? I've
listened to the first 2/3 of it. I've listened to a full cast recording of Dune audiobook, the first 2/3 of it, and I didn't finish.
Did you ever get to the part where Paul puts his hand in the box that hurts his hand? Do you know what I'm talking about at all? All right,
Not a clue.
There's a scene early in Dune where, so there's this part early on in Dune. It's actually a Bene Gesserit thing, where
I probably did get to it. I have almost no recollection.
it's pretty
of what was
early.
happening.
It's pretty early. It's like the first quarter of the book.
I was listening to it in the car and don't remember anything that ever happened.
Well, there's this part where she's like, put your hand in this box, and he does, and it hurts. And I did in junior high, I did that scene as like a dramatic reading. And it was the lamest, nerdiest thing I've ever done.
All right, well, let's do something less nerdy. Let's record a podcast about Twilight Imperium. What do you say?
Well, do you want to talk about Fallout 76 and like what we're excited
You forced
about?
it. I said no. I said no, we're not doing that, and you're forcing it.
I don't want to talk about Twilight Imperium. I want to talk about Bethesda's new game.
We just played a game.
Okay.
Of not Fallout 76.
Right.
You were the Emirates of Hacan.
Send us your Fallout 76 theories.
I was the Yin Brotherhood. And
we were playing with Doug.
Kicked your butt.
You didn't kick my butt.
I kicked your butt.
He won again.
So good.
As the Yin.
Yep.
He still maintains that he thinks they're a bad race, but he has won twice with the Yin now. He won...
Taking that one to my grave.
Right? He won due to initiative order, which, can I just say something? And I will out a victory I had in the stream.
Right.
That it has been coming down to initiative order more and more and more. Like, it's like the tighter this game gets, the more it comes down to, like, who picked the lower number card on the last round.
Right.
And that's crazy.
And sometimes you need a specific card on the last round to do the strategy, and so you don't get to pick your initiative order.
I just can't believe how often now I'm seeing games where multiple people got to 10. I want to share this. I'm starting to feel a little bit like maybe 10's just not doing it for me anymore.
I'm ready for 14.
It's not, I don't think...
We finished the guides and I'm ready for 14. I mean, really.
He's got it tattooed on his chest.
I'm ready for
everybody.
14.
It says he's ready for 14.
Hunter, you've been slaving away at this.
I've been slaving away, but I mean, like, it's
We stalled. Last week we stalled. We can't stall anymore.
Yeah.
This is it. This is your...
What if we did, like, what about... Hakan ideas about where to sit at the table.
No, this is an episode about Hakan, and we got called out for too much preamble last week, so we got to get to them.
Did we get called out for that?
We did.
Who called us out? Name them.
Guess.
Knob Daddy.
Knob Daddy.
Knob Daddy came
Knob
down.
Daddy didn't like the preamble.
Seriously?
I'm serious. Knob Daddy didn't like the preamble.
So Knob Daddy was like, boys, boys, too much talk at the top. Knob Daddy, of course, has every right.
We're sorry.
Sorry.
We are doing the Hakan today, and we spent last week working through the trade stuff because we had to.
And I'm glad we did it. And you know what? I'm glad we did it the way that we did it now, because it seems like there was a decent amount of people that still like kind of got tripped up on. It's like it's hard to describe the nuances of transactions,
right,
in the medium that is audio, right.
Yeah.
And it's also just hard to make like a definitive about how you're going to behave with these real people.
Right, there is no definitive, because it's like you gotta play the room. I mean, there is no definitives, and so it was nice to set up as much of a definitive as we can. So today, we're going forward. We won't talk about that stuff nearly as much.
No, we're only going to talk about that in the relation to the normal strategy guide stuff that we talk about.
So from here on out, you're getting another exhaustive, conservative look at how to play Hakan. I think the one thing we need to do at the top of this is kind of reestablish the fact that this guide will not sound exactly right to every single play group.
No, it won't.
Because of the virtue of how Hakan is. This is the problem with the Emirates of Hacan. Their whole advantage, when we get to the end of this episode and we try to say what their superpower is and like what their abilities are, their abilities rely on metagame. So the problem Hunter and I have had with this guide is the fact that me personally, I'm super mean to Hakan players. I don't like letting them get away with anything. Mm-hmm. And there are lots of groups that share my sentiment, and Hakan never gets a favorable trade. There are
and then they're going to be a bad race in that group. They are not going to be a powerful race.
Right. They actually lose a lot of ability.
It's crazy because they are the only race in the game, the only faction in the game that is, that their ability, you could just say no to it.
Right.
You could just be like, no. I don't want to. You can't, like, if L1 brings their dreadnoughts to bombard your planet, you can't be like, how about we just not do Harrow, though?
Right, exactly.
Hey, guys, we're not doing Harrow. Hey, everyone, hey, we're all in agreement. None of us are going to do Harrow, so we're not doing it. Now I can't do Harrow.
Right.
Like, it doesn't work like that.
Hakan, the whole table can agree to just take away your power.
They could just be like, we don't want to trade with you, and we're not going to.
Right. And we are coming at this guide from closer to that perspective than the other perspective, which is Hakan gets the run of it. Yeah. And when Hakan gets the run of it, they're incredibly good. And honestly, it's like the Jolnar problem of just like, well, how do you tell someone to just do anything because they have so much money every single round, no matter what, and everyone likes them. And so this is the bell curve that we're working from.
I think they might be now that so. I'm sorry, guys. Let's talk for a little bit about the different. I feel like TI3 Hakan versus TI4 Hakan. A lot has changed, really, when it comes down to it. And it sucks because I think they're a fan favorite for a lot of people. They were my favorite race when I was playing TI3. And TI3, they got their money, and then, like, the way trade agreements work, you would just trade them out, and then they were just kind of this consistent advantage that you had for the entire game.
We've said this before. Hakan and TI3 just made their money. They were going to get their money. They didn't make as much as they make in TI4.
Right.
But they always got their money.
Right.
TI4, though.
TI4 is like you have to start over. There's no consistency to Hakan anymore.
Yeah.
Because every time the negotiation starts happening again, you're starting over, basically. Except for if you're playing with a smart group, as you go on, as you play through the game, you're starting at a lower and lower point. Because if you're doing well, people are not going to want to trade with you.
Right.
Even if you're not doing well, if you just have a lot of trade goods, people are going to want to start, they're going to be careful about how they trade.
Yeah.
All right, so that was a little extra stuff, I feel like, for part one.
But I think it sets up the framework of, like, why we're going to say a lot of the things we're going to say. And
we don't want to shock you. I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that play Hakan, and they're like...
That doesn't make any sense with how my group plays them. And that is probably true.
Right.
Unfortunately, this being a lot of people's favorite factions, this guide might be useless to... like a decent percentage of people. This guide might not. I mean, the hope is that we've hit some things that are pretty universal about Hakan, even if they're in a group that is very, very good. But the pitfalls, the things that we're worried about as Hakan, some groups have hear that and say that has never happened ever in my group. I put Sol and Jolnar in this obvious group way above, and I put Hakan in this gray area below them. Or sometimes they are. Sometimes they are as
I think
good
they're just
as Sol and Jolnar, and
I
then
think their
sometimes they
advantage
are
is
definitely
just
not.
so different. Like
It
Sol and
absolutely is.
Jolnar have such a stable. They stand on rock solid ground
Right.
with their advantage. Like we talk about how if there's a Jolnar in the game, you might want to like avoid taking tech.
Right.
That's not going to happen. There are victory points that require people to buy tech, and the way that tech is sort of like bottlenecked, you have to be getting a tech every round.
Almost no other faction requires trade.
Right. So that's essentially the problem. That people can actually look at the trade strategy card and say, no, don't want it. So we got way ahead of ourselves in this episode. Let's
back up and let's hit some basics of Hakan, and let's cover this faction. Last week we covered their basic abilities.
Right. Do we want to do that real fast? We're
going to do it
once more. Their first ability, Master of Trade. You do not have to spend a command token to resolve the secondary ability of the trade strategy card. Their second ability is called Guild Ships. You can negotiate transactions with players who are not your neighbor. Last ability is called Arbiters. When you are negotiating a transaction, action cards can be exchanged as part of that transaction. All right.
They have 6 commodities.
And they also have 6 commodities.
Let's talk about their start. They are the only faction in the game with 3 planets in their home system, or any system for that matter. It's the only 3-planet home system. That being said, quite bad.
Yeah.
A quite terrible home system. It's a 2-0, a 1-1, and a 0-1.
Right.
Yes. So overall, 3-2.
Yeah.
No, yes, 3-2.
3-2.
As much as the Arborex home system, which we have said is bad. And we tend to like multi-planet home systems, but with Hakan, it kind of goes too far in the other direction.
It can be, you can be a juicy target in the late game as a easily invaded home system.
To block you from scoring public objectives, all someone has to do is take 1 planet from your home race. It's very difficult to defend from 3 planets.
Yes. So let's start about their starting technology. It's good. They're a 2-tech race. This is probably, one of the biggest signifiers of a great race is that they start with 2-tech. Their first is anti-mass deflectors. It's blue. It's, you know it.
-1 to
PDS, which is great. You
can go through asteroid
fields. Sarween tools. You get that little extra money when you produce. That 1 good. It's great. Their starting units are also pretty good. We're talking 2 carrier, 1 cruiser, 2 fighters, 4 infantry, 1 space dock.
What's that? 2C4I. That's
2C4I.
So a decent start, but a bad home system, but good starting tech. So it's kind of like a middle. I would put them right in the middle of starting out. And if we're going by our little thing we said before, when we assign our numbers, they end up being kind of right in the middle too.
Right.
I think it's 22 resources is what they total out at, not counting their influence.
Let's talk about the flagship real quick.
But yeah, let's talk about the flagship. If you listened to our flagship episode, you already kind of know what we feel about the Wrath of Kinara. But Hunter.
The Wrath of Kinara. After you roll a die during a space combat in this system, you may spend 1 trade good to apply +1 to the result. It has sustained damage. It costs 8. Combat is 2 on a 7. Movement is 1. Capacity 3. So it's funny because the way they built this flagship, all of the 2 on a 7 combat flagships are the ones that have really cool abilities, and this ability just isn't that cool.
Yeah. Because 2 on a 7 is like the baseline. It should be like that's a basic flagship, and then the ability should be pretty decent.
Right.
A 2 on a 9 is one where it's like the ability is the whole thing.
Right.
It's your whole bag.
Yeah,
and
that's the only thing that
the ones that are 2 on a 5 are usually like that. It's a solid ship with like a decent ability.
I mean, I guess now that I think about it, though, a lot of the 2 on a 5s are still
lots
really
of flagships.
good,
But the point is, how good is the ability of this ship? If the flagship itself is like, okay, 2 on a 7 is fine.
Yeah.
How good is the ability?
It's not good. I mean, I think it clearly is the designers feeling like, well, they've already got so much good going for them. Do they really need a really good flagship on top of that?
Right. It is trying to play into the strengths of Hakan. The idea with Hakan is you're going to get a lot of trade goods, and you should. You should get lots and lots of trade goods. And so the idea here is, you can spend trade goods to improve the result of your dice. But you can't do that multiple times to 1 die.
Right.
So if you needed to hit a 7 and you rolled a 6, yes, you can spend 1 trade good and improve that. And you don't have to do it until after the die has been rolled. That's different from like the barony ability. Barony, you have to spend money, then you will be allowed to reroll. This, you can guarantee 1 thing gets bumped up 1. The problem is, do you really want to spend 8 resources to get a meh ship to have an ability you might use twice ever?
Right.
So when you compare this to 8 resources you could spend on 2 dreadnoughts with the fact that you start with a blue and a yellow and could very easily get to Dreadnought 2, you should always buy 2 Dreadnoughts instead of the Wrath of Kinara.
Really
that's where it breaks down. It's not a horrible ship. It's not like it is bad. It's not like a detriment to your fleet, but your money can be better spent elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think in general, the kind of Hakan guide I'm going to be building for you today has a lot more to do with trying to make as much money early as possible, and then banking that money into the late game. And I just don't know if I can justify telling you that you should buy Wrath of Kinara and then be prepared to spend these trade goods in I could see it maybe as a defensive measure. Like, let's say you're like, I'm going to get attacked. I'm going to build Wrath of Kinara. I've got the trade goods.
Right.
If they attack me, I'm going to be able to make a lot, or I'm going to be able to make a lot of this work.
Right.
But
if you're struggling on fleet supply or things like that, there are reasons to get it, but it's few and far between. So for the most part, you're not going to hear us talk about it pretty much for the rest of this episode.
Right. We're done. This is it.
It's not good. Hunter,
let's talk the racial tech.
Yeah.
The racial tech is the first one is called production biomes. It requires 2 green, and it is an action. Exhaust this card and spend 1 token from your strategy pool to gain 4 trade goods, and choose one other player. That player gains 2 trade goods. The obvious kind of use of this is late game when people don't want to trade with you anymore.
Guaranteed money, and that is nice. It's very nice.
Right. And we're going to talk about it maybe a little bit later in the episode as a tech possibility. I will go ahead and say I'm not super hot on it.
Yeah.
So let's kind of go on from there. Quantum Data Hub Node is the other, and it's the one that, everybody loves this one.
Yep.
Everyone loves this one.
Yeah. I want to throw this out there, actually. Read it real quick, and then we'll...
Sure. So at the end of the strategy phase, you may spend 1 token from your strategy pool and give another player 3 of your trade goods. If you do, give 1 of your strategy cards to that player and take 1 of his strategy cards. Now, your brain should be lighting up at the last round potential of this ability. And I am not going to challenge that.
Right.
At all.
It will win you games.
It will literally be the tech that, if I didn't get that, I would have lost.
Right.
And those stories are out there, and I believe it 100%.
It's happened.
You can kind of already feel where we're going to
go. There's a really great quote from RoboFish. And it says this, I rate this as potentially the most powerful faction technology in the game when it works, which is only sometimes.
Right.
The thing about it is, you need Quantum Data Hub Node when you are tied for the victory or about to get your victory and you need that strategy card. The problem with Quantum Data Hub Node is because of the 3 yellow cost of it, it is not something you can take advantage of very often. You're really only going to use it once or twice because the problem is you're not going to rush for Quantum Data Hub Node. It's not very wise to rush for it, and if you do rush for it, you have to spend 3 trade goods every time you try to use it, and there's just lots of ways that it can get counteracted. People won't trade with you if you have Quantum Data Hub Node.
It costs a lot even from the point that you get it. It's you're still going to need to have command counters for it. I want to read one thing for you. I want to read you a different tech that also costs 3 yellow. So this one is called mirror computing. Right. When you spend trade goods, each trade good is worth 2 resources or influence instead of 1. Now that is a 3 yellow tech that I would throw everything out the window to get.
Right.
Now think about it. That mirror computing is that's 3 yellow you had to get to that wonderful, wonderful ability that you're going to get to use constantly.
Yes.
It's Hunter's Law like you wouldn't believe.
Exactly.
Quantum Data Hub Node has so many qualifiers that I can imagine there's just as many stories as there are people that I got it and it won me the game. I bet you there's just as many people out there that got it and they never needed it, and it required them to go all the way down yellow to get. Yep. They had to get graviton, they had to get transit diodes.
Right.
These are not techs that are super important for Hakan. Maybe transit diodes is all right, but
just generally speaking, it's all right. But it doesn't do it's not doing anything special for Hakan.
Right.
So again, we'll talk more about Quantum Data Hub Node later. But suffice it to say, we like it, but there are struggles with it.
Right.
In no way are we saying, don't get it. You should get it if you're able to get it. Right. But the problem is there's a time limit to the game.
Right. And are you going to be able to get it? That's really the thing.
Yeah. Let's do one more thing, and that's the promissory note.
The promissory note is called Trade Convoys. It is an action. Place this card face up in your play area. While this card is in your play area, you may negotiate transactions with players who are not your neighbor. If you activate a system that contains one or more of the Hakan player's units and return this to the Hakan player. I'm going to maybe do a Space Cats Peace Turtles first and say that I like it, and I think you can give it to people, and that it's a good...
Yeah. And we used to not say that, too. I think we used to be really afraid of this, but I actually don't think you're giving up, because it's not... Unlike so many other promissory notes, it's not taking any power away from you.
No, it doesn't take any power away from you. And it makes it sound like, well, then that person's going to be able to negotiate with most of the time, late game, everybody's neighbors anyways.
Sure.
So it's only really going to make a difference in the early game. And it's not like it makes it where they have more commodities all of a sudden.
The problem is, Hakan still has 6 commodities.
Right.
You're still the best trade partner in the game. Like, that you will still be traded with.
You still should have more negotiating power than your fellow player.
Yeah.
And that's in general what we've been trying to stress with this. The problem isn't so much that as a con you don't have power over your neighbors. It's that the entire table might have power over you.
Right. So that being said, if you play with a group that is pretty vocal about we hate Hakan, we will do everything to stop Hakan, I wouldn't give the promissory note out in that situation, because they will probably trade with that other person now and not trade with you.
Maybe.
So, and I'm literally only saying that in the situation where the entire board is obviously battling against you.
I mean, I'll say this, though. I think that you got to get what you got to get out of it.
You might, if this might make your only trade partner all game.
Right.
You two might both have that ability, but you two might only trade with each other then, just because of you both wanting trade more often. It makes you two, there's a lot of reason for you two to be partners, and especially depends on what you're trading for it, right? You're not just giving someone this promissory note, you're getting something in return. So if you're getting, the best example is, Hunter, you gave it to Mentak, and Mentak gave you their
promise of protection, so that Mentak could not steal from me.
The two of you became great trade partners.
Right, and I think this makes a lot of sense for Mentak to want to do this trade and for Hakan to want this trade to happen as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other promissory notes out there that Hakan will want it, and giving up trade convoys is a perfectly fine price to pay, because that might put them further in your camp. You might make a buddy.
Now, obviously, I think the best people to want to trade this with are the 2 commodity races, because they're just not going to have that much at the negotiating table anyways.
Right.
But if I'm going to be conservative all here, I'm going to say that the 4 commodity races are the ones that you're maybe going to want to think about a little bit more. In particular, Jolnar with E-Res siphons, I see rack up trade goods so often. Mm-hmm. So maybe you don't need to put that feather in their cap. Now, they have a really good racial promissory note too, and if they're willing to trade that for you, then I don't know. I mean, that's a tough call.
It's a tough call. I would hesitate, though. I think Hakan has a lot to give away, and Jolnar can do a lot with gifts. And so I think you as Hakan, we'll talk about this more in counters, but I don't think you need to give Jolnar that many inches. I think they're always going to gain more than you gain.
Right.
So
they're great, right?
You don't need Jolnar's help, and Jolnar probably needs your help more than you need theirs. So let's keep moving on. We talked about the home system. Starting tech, the best thing about the starting tech is it kind of gives you some good options.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of wide open as Hakan, especially with what the tech we're gonna recommend you get round 1. You'll be even more open. But yeah, for a race that a lot of people talk about going PDS with Hakan, which I was never really able to make work. We'll kind of get more down to that later, but you're so close to Dreadnought 2. It's crazy how close you are to Dreadnought 2.
Closer than any other faction except for Jolnar. I mean, Jolnar's tied with you.
Right.
I mean, it is crazy that you could so easily get Dreadnought. And you're not a faction that
leans that way.
Yeah, you don't need Dreadnought 2, but
it's
just further proof that the power of Dreadnought 2 is a little bit out of check. But Hunter, let's build a map.
All right.
Where do we want to go? Where do we want to go as Hakan?
So the thing that I really like for Hakan is yellow skips, mostly because while it may sound like I'm kind of dogging on Quantum Data Hub Node a little bit, I still want it.
Right. The problem
with something I would like to make work.
The problem with Quantum Data Hub Node is partially the cost of spending a strategy and 3 trade goods.
Right.
But more is the time cost of needing to go all the way down the yellow tech tree.
To get it.
If you have a yellow tech skip, if you can get 2 yellow tech skips
get
it, then you should get it. You should get it no matter what. If
to
you
be able to skip Graviton to get to transit diodes and then quantum, that sounds really good.
Yes. it becomes more questionable if you have time to get Quantum Data Hub node when you don't have a yellow tech skip. So yellow tech skips are very important, but Hunter, would you sacrifice a solid good slice? Let's say the yellow tech skip is in a bad slice. Will you take a yellow tech skip over a solid pie slice?
No, because it's such a niche tech that I can't imagine myself going into the early game and being like, it's going to come down to Quantum Data Hub node. Like, it's such a specific situation.
Right. And here's the other problem with it. It's funny that we're talking so much about it, but we just know people really love it as a tech, and people really want us to recommend it. It's actually not a very good one to get early, because the earlier you start using it, the quicker you're going to get the board to turn against you.
Right, because, if you start using Quantum Data Hub node, like, in the early game, then they know it costs 3 trade goods.
Right.
So they're going to start looking at your trade sheet, which they probably are anyways. That's the problem that I keep running into as a con, is everybody keeps looking at how much money I have. I wish I could hide it. I literally wish I could, like, get a coffee mug and, like,
throw it
put it on top of, geez. Anyways, so I wouldn't say sacrifice a solid slice in order to get a yellow skip. I would say also, like, look at the green skip. I'm not crazy about production biomes, but I will say this: if you can get it early for some reason, that's the only way I see it. That's the only way I really see it working out for you.
Yeah, I want to take this moment to say that one of the Hakan games I played, I had the dream scenario, and this is like, you shouldn't bank on this happening,
right?
But I had a green tech skip and a yellow tech skip. And that is amazing,
right?
Because I was able to get Quantum Data Hub node and production biomes early, and the benefit of that is production biomes is a guaranteed 4 trade goods.
Yes.
So you can't not have the trade goods for Quantum Data Hub node.
It's amazing.
I was always getting my 4, keeping 3, and using it on Quantum, and that is an amazing combo. The problem is, in a normal game that is so far down 2 trees that you are not really inclined to go down for other, like, I mean, maybe green is okay for you. Regardless, it's so far down 2 trees, it's not like we can recommend that as an actual strategy. But I do want to point out, it happened to me once, and it is very, very good. If you have a green and a yellow skip, I recommend doing it, because that combo is kind of unstoppable.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, if it's a game where that you can make that work, then the thing about those 2 techs too is that they lead you down some very non-aggressive like tech trees.
Right.
Like, if the idea of you having like green yellow and not like unit upgrades,
right,
I feel like means like, oh, you must have been having a game where you never really needed to move outside of your slice.
Yep.
You don't need that 2 movement on anything really.
Right.
It's really just hard in general to play a game where you don't have any blue, really, or any unit upgrades that you get from blue. Like, it's just hard to make that work. And
you start so close to blue, it's hard to say, you start right next to Dreadnought 2, but instead you should go down yellow and green. Like, it's just, that's the problem. The fact that they have so many options is actually what kind of makes them difficult to play, because picking the right choice, you need to, like, really pay attention to the game and know what that direction
And then if you want to go down the PDS route, you got to throw a red in there, too. Like, it's madness.
So let's talk about strategy cards. We built our map. We got just a good slice. Hopefully there's a yellow skip. Yeah. Maybe there's a green. Whatever.
So round 1, strategy card, what you're going to want to pick is diplomacy.
Oh my god.
It's really good.
Really?
Yeah, you pick that. Oh wait, no, sorry, did I say diplomacy? I meant imperial. And the thing that you do with imperial,
you rush for Mechatol.
Right. And then you get all the points and you flip it and then the game's over.
You win.
No, guys, you pick trade. All right?
Because that's what you will do many, many times as Hakan.
You pick trade, I think, mostly because, like we've kind of already said in this episode already, if you don't pick trade, a lot of times the table might be okay with not picking trade.
Yeah.
It's not like Jomar.
People, like Arborek is one of the only other factions I can think of that's like, they're going to take trade. And most people are not going to battle you over trade. Also,
when you have, like we defined in part 1, when you have the trade strategy card, you have a lot of negotiating
especially
power.
Round 1. Yeah, round 1, you need trade because that's when you have the most power.
Right.
Nobody is going to be neighbors with each other. You need to capitalize on this opportunity.
And I found in general that I am best getting trade early in the game rather than late in the game, because later in the game people don't want to trade with you as much.
Yeah.
Like, basically
they don't want to trade with anybody as much. Late in the game people start to shut up.
Right.
But in the beginning, in the first 3 rounds of the game, usually lots of things can happen. People are easier to convince.
Think about it like this. It's like a timer. Like, when the second you start playing a game as Hakan, you set the timer and there is a point where the table is going to be done with you.
Yes.
And they're not going to want to talk to you anymore. So I'm going to say this: early game, playing as Hakan, you want to take trade. I'm not even just saying round 1. I'm saying like the early game in general. You are trying to get trade as much as possible, and you're trying to make as much money as possible every time you play it. Yep. And you are not spending all of that money in the round. God forbid you do that. Yeah. You bank those trade goods.
So what if someone's blocking us? People are running hard against Hakan. What do we take?
Politics. It's the classic.
Yeah, we need trade.
Basically, where we've gotten to in these strategy guides, I feel there's the best strategy card, and then there's politics.
Yeah, because politics is a good card in its own right, and then it sets you up for the next round. But especially Hakan, you lean so heavily on trade that, yeah, I agree with this.
And completely. Also, don't forget that you can trade action cards. So when you take politics, like, it's great because you are getting ahead on that action card game. Yep. You're probably going to be able to sell some of those action cards, and in general, you're just going to want to, like, I mean, we've talked about the potential of selling a sabotage for support for the throne. I was not able to hook that up in the game we played earlier today, but I was close at times. Yeah. There was a moment where you made the offer, and I was ready to do it.
Yeah, I was ready to do it. Right. What secondaries are we doing?
The only one I feel like you definitely got to do is tech, obviously. Yeah. I didn't warfare secondary a lot as Hakan. I think it's just because you start
2C4I.
Yeah,
2C4I races don't need it.
Right. In a lot of situations, I haven't had like a need to go like to build another carrier that's going to get to take something that turn. That doesn't really happen. Right. And we're not recommending that you ever take warfare round 1 unless it's like the juiciest of reasons. Right. But like you really do want to prioritize tech or trade as much as possible. So yeah, I'm thinking tech secondary
and bank a command counter. Yeah, why? You don't have to spend. This is something that especially newer players I think have trouble understanding, especially because like if it's your first game, you're ready to do stuff in Twilight Imperium, and it's hard to convince someone like, hey, just don't do stuff. Right. Because people don't fully understand the command counter economy right away, and so they don't realize like, oh, I'm going to get a lot less back, and the next round's going to be in a lot of trouble. So if you're newer, it is okay to like only use some of your command counters and save some for round 2. You can sometimes excel because you had a way more solid round 2 than a lot of factions are able to do, because most people starve themselves of command counters. So this is a wonderful opportunity of like, you don't have to do the secondary of warfare, or you don't, you can spend one less command counter than everybody else. You can afford to.
Right.
And it's fine.
Right. And I think in general, when I play Hakan round 1, I try and pop trade ASAP. Yeah. Mostly because I don't want anybody establishing neighboring relations with each other early.
You want to be the only option.
Yeah, I want it to literally be like, if it's round 1 and I got trade, it's like you're trading with me or nothing is happening with you.
There's another important reason too. And it's how many resources do you have in your home
system? You start
with
3 resources. So that means that if somebody pops tech turn 1, you don't have enough money to pay for the tech.
Yeah, so you need to pop trade first because you just need to be prepared to have the money.
Right.
Now, we said in last week that your goal is basically to get 9 or more trade goods. Right. You get 3 from trade. You have 6 that you should be able to somehow flip. So let's just work with the assumption that you got 9 trade goods and you have 3 resources in your home system. Hunter, round 1, what are we doing with our $12?
Well, what I like to do is I like to spend my home system on units. In general, I always end up buying a Dreadnought. It's 3 plus Sarween.
You're probably going to get Dreadnought too.
What's nice about the Dreadnought is that early, you have a pretty defensible position. You've got a cruiser that you could send to an equidistant planet to like block. And if you pop that Dreadnought down there, you're probably not gonna have to deal with any like weird shenanigans. Basically, definitely. You maybe want to leave like a fighter or 2 in your home system, and then you're probably good. The other thing I would say is
4 trade goods on
tech. Okay. For Neural. Yeah. Neural Motivator, I feel like is the best round 1 tech for Hakan. Yeah. With a bullet.
Yeah. I'm not even calling this an exception, but like if you know you need gravity drive because of whatever that reason could potentially be, there's a case for gravity drive, but I think we both want to convince you to not and go for Neural. Neural is worth it. It's super worth it round 1. And like we stressed last episode, action cards are an extra resource for you to trade with. And again, you're doing all of your trading early. Right. So you want as many action cards right away as you can get so that you have lots of things to trade away so that you can make as much money as fast as possible.
Right.
Hunter, we have 5 trade goods left over. What are we doing?
I say bank them. I say bank them for so many reasons. Here's the first most obvious reason is if you got 5 trade goods sitting, if you end up wanting to turn this into a Mechatol run, which I was actually never really able to pull off as a con, you can. That you're going to need one influence and you've got it. Yeah. And I'm not even saying you need to spend the trade goods on it. I'm saying you could have a normal round 2 where you spend all of your planets and then you could still turn around and be like, you know what? I'm going for Mechatol. They didn't get it. I can go for it.
Right.
And it's good to just have that in your back pocket. The other thing is the stage 1 VP is 5 trade goods. So you got that in your back pocket too.
Yep. Always ready for that.
The other thing too is like banking trade goods in general just means that later on there's a very good chance that certain VPs are going to come out and you're going to be ready for them. You're already going to have them claimed. Yep. If you don't, the problem is that when a resource or influence or trade good thing pops up, all of a sudden everybody looks at you and they're not going to let you get that money, basically.
Right. We used to have a fear of banking trade goods because I don't remember all of the things, but in TI3 it seemed like there were many things that just made you lose a bunch of trade goods.
Right.
And the more we've dug through everything, there's really almost nothing in TI4. There's like one agenda that can maybe make you lose trade goods. So in general, for all factions, banking trade goods is like never that bad of an idea.
Yeah.
Use them when you need them. Otherwise, hold on to them because it might be worth a victory point.
It's literally one agenda that you have to look out for.
Right.
That's it. And I mean, if it comes up, it's going to hurt you because you're probably going to be the only one with trade goods. Yeah. So it'll be tough. Yeah. But do we want to talk mid game?
I do. Yeah. So the mid game is an interesting conversation because we basically the entire last episode was kind of functionally talking about mid game and trading and stuff like that. But let's keep going forward on to let's assume we're banking lots of trade goods for objectives, getting units when we need them. We're not saying don't build an army. It's keep up to pace with other factions, but you should be making much more money than everyone else, and you shouldn't just blow that all on units because units does not always translate to victory points. But trade goods can directly translate to victory points.
You should definitely build a little as you go, because one of the limitations that you have as Hakan is that you have one of the worst production limits of any race. With your 1 space dock on a 2-0 planet, that is 4 plastic you can do every turn. So or every round. So I will say at some point you are probably going to need to do the secondary of construction and throw down that second space dock. I'm sad to say, it used to be my favorite thing to do as Hakan was to triple dock, was to throw 3 space docks down in my home system. And I'm sad to say, but the way the economy shakes out in TI4, I probably would never suggest that construction is a strategy card that you're going to be able to get unless it's of the utmost importance.
Right.
Your secret objectives are literally 3. I should take.
Yeah. But even then, 3 space docks in your home system, it's just not as good as it used to be because it's slower to get space docks out, sort of.
Right.
Or at least kind of more costly. It used to just be 4 resources. You get a space dock down. Great. It might take a couple rounds for it to become a thing you're actually producing out of. But now the fact that you have to take a objectively kind of bad strategy card to do it, the costs are pretty high. And even more so, none of your home planets are that good, and it just feels like there's more reasons nowadays to have forward docks.
Right.
You want a dock getting close to Mechatol or protecting another area outside of your home system. I just think in general, if you're forcing yourself to build 3 space docks, it's not as good anymore to triple dock. Consider it. Maybe it works for you because the advantage there is if you triple dock your home system, you can build a lot out of it once, but you have to have the rest of the game work in that favor too, right? You need lots of fleet supply. You need all these other things, and those things don't end up adding up the way they did in TI3.
Right.
So
it's just the economy of the game is different. You don't get consistent trade goods throughout the entire game anymore.
Yeah.
So because of that, certain things have to be adjusted. I think now I've gotten to a point where I built a little bit every round. That's what I did. I just kind of slowly accumulated a fleet instead of in TI3 it used to be I would just turn around and boom.
Yeah. Here's all my dreadnoughts.
And in fact, in that play of the week that we had last week, that was a story about a Hakan turning around,
but that was from TI3.
But that was TI3.
Yep.
It was not TI4.
Yeah. Okay. So last week we talked so much about what you're trading for. So let's kind of hit the highlights of what we're trying to do with trade goods and promissory notes and action cards. What is just kind of the end goal of all of these resources we have at our disposal.
We're trying to build up a sizable bank of trade goods so that we can go into the stage 2 public objectives and be able to fulfill those those influence ones and the trade good ones without like having to break our bank, because that's how you're really going to win us a con, is those stage 2 resource style objectives cost, like it'll basically make a player have to do nothing for an entire round. Like, oh, I got to spend all my resources.
Right.
And
not you.
Right, not you. You get to have a normal round when they're having a crazy round.
Yes.
Or, alternatively, and this is actually what happens to me more often, if things start going south for you, you will still be able to fulfill objectives because you have this bank of trade goods.
Yeah. It's your insurance policy.
Right.
And so, you're trying to sell your non-trade good stuff for trade goods. You're just trying to make money.
Right.
I mean, you're selling promissory notes. You're selling action cards. You're buying action cards to sell them later to someone else for a higher profit. Like, you are playing banker.
Right.
I mean, you're really just trying to gain as many trade goods as possible.
You can also use your action cards. We didn't talk about this enough, I feel like, in part 1, but you can also, in the mid-game, use your action cards a lot to just kind of influence the board shape a little bit. There was a point where, in the game we were playing today, where you had Mechatol, and you had the lead, and I was like, I could really help this other player just unseat you, and it really didn't cost me anything. It didn't end up working. Because of other action card stuff. But that's what's really cool about Hakan, is sometimes you can get involved in basically anything. Yeah, you can just influence events.
Because you can always trade with anybody. Again, we said this last week, but you can get involved in any scenario.
Right.
Any fight that's about to happen, anything that's about to happen, you can always just hey, do you want an extra push, or do you want me to help you prevent that from happening? And you can just look for so many opportunities to make money where no other faction can get in there.
Right.
All right, let's talk about stuff we didn't talk about last week.
Right, let's talk tech path.
Yes, tech path. I think this is the big question mark for lots of people. We are afraid of Quantum Data Hub Node a little bit. We're not saying rush for it. So what is the path? We got Neural first. So now we have 1 blue, 1 yellow, 1 green.
Right.
That's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. That's what I don't like about it. Is it feels like for the tech VPs, you have all these interesting options, but they don't necessarily all flow together with the tech objectives. Yep. So I'm going to say you go after Neural, and then you get Gravity Drive. And from there, you're either going to go towards the obvious unit upgrades that leads to, things like Dread 2, Carrier 2, Fighter 2, or you're going to then go for Daxiv or Graviton, depending on whether you want to go for Quantum Data Hub Node, or if you just want, if I could see, I've gone for Daxiv because I would be in a game and I would feel like this is going to be more immediately useful to me. Whereas I was more, I'm just going to forsake Quantum Data Hub Node for now.
Right. The real struggle of it is, hey, everybody, Infantry 2 is
very good.
Really crazy good. I cannot express to you enough how good it is. More and more factions, I'm just auto getting it, and I have rarely regretted doing it.
Right.
Infantry 2.
That's insurance, isn't Infantry 2.
So I know it's weird to say you start with a blue and a yellow, go green, but there are lots of games where you need good ground forces and you need to take stuff and you need to hold it. That's not to say we're not recommending Dread 2, because we totally are, but the problem here is you actually, once you get Gravity Drive, you need to stop and you need to look, and we can't give a solid recommendation.
There's so many different ways you could go, but how about this? How about we actually just talk about what we're not recommending?
Yes, I like that.
I am not really saying any red.
Nope.
I feel like it's too many colors to recommend to go down at one time. Unless you end up taking tech a lot in the mid game.
Which we don't advise because you want to be taking trade.
Right.
Here's the big problem. In this discussion, and in the same thing, because you're saying no red, which means you're also kind of saying no PDS2.
Right.
And the reason for it is you don't have time to play construction a bunch to get a bunch of PDS down. You don't have time to play tech a bunch to really race down tech trees. You are getting trade so often because that's where your strength is, that you don't have time to do these other things. So you have to do whatever uses your money the most efficiently.
Right. Trade synergizes a lot better. If you're picking trade a lot, you can build fleets.
Yep.
That's something easy to spend your money on. And you could potentially throw down another space dock off of the secondary of construction and then have like a good, production center and easily throw money at trade and then also still keep up with tech.
Right.
If we tell you to take construction, well, now you're keeping up with that and kind of only that because a Hakan without that money isn't going to be able to do all of those things.
You can't.
It's like if you take trade, you can basically ensure, all right, I'm going to have fleets and I'm going to have tech. You take construction and all we can ensure that we're going to have PDS, basically.
Right. If you take trade every time, you get to be a jack of all trades. And if you don't take trade to do other goals, you are specializing on those goals and foregoing the other options. And you've just given up the kind of wide amount of room that you typically have as Hakan. So play the room.
I think the only way that PDS2 would be viable, and I'm willing to talk more about this if this becomes like a thorn in my side, basically.
Sure.
I think in order for PDS2 to work, you're gonna have to take plasma scoring round 1. Yeah. And that means you didn't get neural round 1, which means that you don't have this like steady stream of action cards in your hand that you can trade with. So now there's a whole part of your race's ability that you're not getting to use. And I can't imagine a game going well for me with Hakan where I did not have that ability. Because once you get shut out of the trade game in like the mid to late, the action card thing is the only thing you can really work anymore because people will always have to say yes to action cards.
Right. Yeah. So it just seems better to recommend kind of staying shallow. What else are we not recommending really? Deep blue?
No, not really.
You don't need fleet logistics and light wave. You're not pulling off fancy shenanigans.
No, really. Like I feel like you need a steady fleet that's good, that's solid, but you don't. And I mean, it's always weird to say don't get Lightwave because there's always going to be games where you could have gotten Lightwave. I just don't feel like they're that type of race. I felt like I was always using my fleets very either just to make sure that no one could invade me, or to strike out in a very I would send carriers out by themselves just to take a planet and just know I'm Hakan. If you destroy that, no big.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I can spend 4 trade goods again later.
Right.
And I think the point there too is Hakan isn't ghosts and they're not Sar and they're not Yin. You are playing the late game. You're hoping that banking your trade goods will pay off for you. So you're playing this kind of slow. I don't call it turtling because turtling would involve building up these massive defenses, but it's more playing the options, seeing where the objectives go, and waiting to spend your money until you know what you should be spending your money on.
Right.
You have the option to do that, and most factions don't have the option to do that. Most factions don't get to just I can hold on to this money and wait and see what I'm supposed to spend it on. A lot of factions just have to I'm picking this route, and I hope it works out for me. Hakan can constantly wait and see, and you should be doing that as Hakan. You should wait and see. Wait and see. Another
unit upgrade I want to talk about that I would actually recommend is also Space Dock 2. Like I said, they have a production problem. If you can maybe just be I'm not going to... The problem with construction, too, is generally the secondary doesn't come up in a very opportune moment. People are generally good about flipping it at a time where it's this wouldn't be good for me to do right now. So if you're running into that problem, I've gotten Space Dock 2 as Hakan several times now, and I can recommend it. The other thing I think that's crazy that we're not bringing up that I think people will be upset about is that we're not really saying War Sun cats. That's not the type of kitties that we're really
because the theory is you have a lot of money, you can afford War Suns, but boy, red tech, just plasma scoring, not really good for you.
Right.
Magen, not good for anyone ever. Duranium armor, not even that great for you.
Not good if you don't already have a Dreadnought fleet.
Right. And Dreadnought 2 is better than having Duranium armor.
Right.
And then, we finally got War Suns. The problem with War Suns is they're always too little too late.
Right.
And you would have to gun for that. Again, this is a situation of you would be picking War Suns early and heading for it and foregoing a lot of other options. Whereas you can just get the safe tech options and wait and see.
And see, that's the thing is I'm not recommending that you be this type of cat that basically is just I'm getting a lot of money and I'm spending it on these massive fleets.
Right.
War Sun is essentially you saying well, I'm going to have enough money in the late game to buy War Sons. And
you might not.
Maybe you won't.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, let the trade goods be like your backup.
Exactly.
Play like a normal game where you have these trade goods that are essentially saying, like, I'm getting the VP no matter what, and you can't do anything to stop it. And that's why, in the end, I didn't even want to. I got to be honest. Like, the whole time, the reason this guide took so long is because I was like, I don't want to be another, hey, you should go Dread 2. Like,
yeah. We say that about so many things.
Yeah, like, I did not, I wanted to make an argument for, like, a really cool style of Hakan. But in the end, I ended up feeling like what makes more sense is to, like, go with what's pretty obvious unit upgrade wise. The classic good stuff. Dread 2, Carrier 2, Fighter 2, like Infantry 2 even. And then just let those trade goods be your backup.
Yep. Yeah, again, I the tagline for this keeps, I didn't think about this beforehand, but it's wait and see at every level. I mean, it's just hold out because you can hold out. You have that option, and most factions don't. We always ask this for some stupid reason. Should you be running out of command counters? Is that a problem? Do they have a command counter problem?
I don't think they do, because they're a green race. They're a race that, I mean, I would say that they are yellow, blue, and green.
A little bit of both.
Almost all of it.
But all three,
But hypermetabolism is not a weird get for them. I think you would probably get it mid-game, which I think for a lot of people makes them feel like, why even get it then?
Right.
But you could still get it, and then, like, I got it today and felt like, oh, well, in the late game, this is really helping me out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that you should be having a CC problem, because if it gets really out of whack, you can always spend trade goods on CCs, which I know isn't the best world to live in.
But it's not that you're spending 3 trade goods on a command counter. It's that, I have a 0-2 or a 1-2, and I don't have any other planets that are good to tap.
Right.
But I can throw a trade good in there.
Right.
And that you can usually afford one command counter.
You can pretty efficiently like take your planets and then get the most out of them.
Yeah.
That's something that's cool that you can do with the con, because you always have trade goods.
Right. So what could have gone wrong for us early game? What could have, like, really jacked up our mid game?
Well, it's funny that I just said you always have trade goods, because that might not be true. Maybe the table is shutting you out. Maybe you're not able to pick trade for very good reasons.
Right.
Yeah, either someone else is taking it and they're shutting you out, or your secret objectives are telling you to do something else. And then
it happens. It definitely happens.
It just happens. And if that happens, then I feel bad for you, because I think in a lot of games, this is at least true. If you don't take trade, then people are probably going to be like, nah, I'm not gonna.
Yep.
The problem is that you kind of, like, even when other people take trade, you still have, like, a really good footing. So I can see like being in that position and being like, I'm not going to take trade and then have to contend with a con and not even have like an easy time out of getting my trades done.
And here's what I'll say. If this is happening to you, if they're turning on Hakan, you just got to keep buttering them up. I mean, you just
don't be the bad guy.
Right. Be a good guy. Get people's, I mean, make a couple of like unfavorable trades for you to just show good faith to someone. Like, get one person on your side, because if that's what's happening to you, if you're getting shut out, you need to turn a couple people, and you need to get people to realize, actually, man, I can use Hakan to make a lot of money.
Right.
And that's when you get your foot in the door, and then you can slowly turn things around. That's a really tricky problem to solve, honestly. Like, us suggesting this, all of our advice is just kind of like, ooh, make kissy faces at people and give them a back rub. Like, there isn't a good way to just like fix the meta for you, right? There's nothing. It's the same problem as, how do I get, as SAR, how do I keep someone from reactor meltdowning my space dock?
Right, you can't.
And the answer is like,
happen.
no, you don't have an upper hand there. How do I get people to prevent me from getting to Mechatol as Winnu?
I mean, I think Hakan is interesting because of the action card thing. The more knowledge you have of, and the more the other players have knowledge of like what action cards they need to be afraid of and what they need to be looking out for.
They'll know when to pay you.
Like, I mean, if I had a SAR in my game, you know that round one where they get all those trade goods? If I had a sabotage, here we go. If I had a sabotage, like, look how crazy this is getting.
Yep.
I would be like, hey, you want to buy this sabotage from me so that you don't get reactor meltdown later?
Right.
I feel like an experienced group would be like, actually, that's logical. Or like, if you have, if somebody gets Messiah, and they're like, I don't want this sabotaged, it's like, okay, well, I'll sell you one.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, you need to, I agree with that. You need to, because it's a meta-dependent thing, you got to know a lot about the game to have a solid Hakan.
Right.
That's the funny line graph with Hakan. With an all-new group, Hakan's going to do really well because people aren't going to play against Hakan enough.
Right.
Like with a brand new group, all 6 of you are new, Hakan's probably going to excel.
Right.
With a medium group that's like pushing it against Hakan but doesn't really understand what Hakan can do for them, Hakan sucks, does really poorly because people are just like, nope, I hate you, go away.
Right.
And then you hit the like really high level of everyone knows every action card and every agenda and everyone knows what they're looking for. Hakan is able to step in the door and be like, I can offer you the tools that you need.
Right, because they understand the trades that you're that it's actually a good trade.
Yes,
basically.
And that's the difficulty of Hakan. That's why we had so much trouble with this episode is we don't know where every player is at in that line graph. Mm-hmm. There are 2 Hakans that do pretty well, and there's one Hakan that really poops his pants. It's so hard. And that happened we had like that moment even for us, like in our experience. The first game we had with Hakan, it was like, oh my gosh, Hakan's running away with it.
Right.
The next game we played with Hakan, it was like, don't let him do anything. Right. And it was a terrible game for Hakan. And then we've now hit this weird middle ground.
Right. And I'll say this though, regardless, I think consistently it is very hard to negotiate as Hakan late game.
Yes.
For that, like when you're essentially asking for trades for VPs, it's hard to keep that up. Yeah, people won't do it. People won't do it at least, like, it becomes this weird game where you have to give someone a VP in order for them to give you a VP.
Yep.
And that starts feeling like, I had to do that earlier,
it's really weird
in the game. And I didn't like it, and it wasn't, I don't know, it was a bummer.
You make a lot of weird choices with Hakan. Hunter, who do we counter?
I don't know, like, I think there's just some weird relationships that Hakan has. I don't know that they really counter
This is another one of
anybody.
those factions that doesn't have any... Again, all of your abilities are purely meta-dependent, and so it's like, how do you say a meta strategy counters someone? It just doesn't. But does anybody counter us?
Well, I think Mentak can obviously be a thorn in your side. If there's a Mentak that it has mirror computing and just wants to steal trade goods from you, that's not going to be fun. Yeah. And also, Mentak is more of a combat leaning race than you. So like technically, if they're doing well economically, they can probably shut you down. They've got pre-fire on their cruisers. We've seen PDS Mentak again and again. So it could be a case where like they're my neighbor, they have adjacency, and I cannot get rid of them, and they won't give me promise of protection. Now that being said, I think that there's a very good reason for the 2 of you to trade your racial promissories.
Yeah, and you 2 can have... That's what's so interesting about your relationship with Mentak is they can really hurt you, but there are lots of reasons for them to work with you. Right. And you should try to capitalize on those kind of as fast as possible and establish a relationship because you can make a partner out of Mentak, and I think it is in Mentak's interest. It is also in Mentak's interest to like hurt you if they're directly adjacent to you and like the pie slice is shaped just right. They can do that, but I think more often the 2 of you can help each other. So it's sort of
you
like...
You definitely don't want to be neighbors, though.
No,
being a neighbor
sucks.
with a Mentak is going to make things really difficult that way.
Is there any other counters?
I'll say this. I'll say this. Isarl did something really crummy to me today, and it made me realize that there is an Isarl problem that you might have to deal with. Because you're Hakan, you're going to want to advertise your action cards.
Yep.
Isarl is very interested in having as many action cards as possible, which normally means like, oh, they could be like a good trade partner. But Isarl also has Magian implants. They can look at your hand and steal cards from you.
Yeah, so if you're advertising all of your action cards, usually there's a gamble with Magian implants. And that gamble is, I gotta pick the right person. I don't know what they have yet. But if Hakan has been like, I got Sabotage, who wants it? I got Plague, who wants it? Then every time Isarl can just be like, well, I know they've got at least one good card.
Right.
You're the person I'm Magian.
And don't think I'm a dingus, because the Isarl I was playing with didn't have Magian implants when I was doing this. I would not be such a doobie to like advertise the card knowing that Isarl can steal from me. But Isarl then had an action card called Spy that just let them do that. And the second they did that, I realized like, if they got Magian, that would have just been the same thing too. And it was rough to realize.
So they can mess up your metagame. Yeah. But Isarl is also an honorable mention because again, the 2 of you can have a really fun, interesting relationship. They want skips. They want your junk more than any other faction. They just want to take your junk from you.
You should be able... They're a 3 commodity race. You should be able to keep them like pretty fat and happy, and they should be able to keep you pretty fat and happy.
Yeah. definitely. Barony and Letnev. What about
Barony
them?
and Letnev could use your trade goods, really.
Yeah.
I think a lot
Nobody
of times,
likes to trade with Barony.
Right, nobody does. But
And you probably have room to.
yeah,
often.
the thing is, like, if in general what we're saying holds true, there's going to be a lot of games where you come to the table as Hakan and people are not going to want to trade with you anymore. And sometimes that means you have to look at the undesirables, like the people that you don't want to trade with normally. And Barony is kind of that number one.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll say this, if Barony's like across the table from you, I'm not opposed to funding their war effort.
Right.
Help them crush two other people, as long as there's a way to keep them in check. I mean, that's the fear, is if you're funding Barony and they start to run away with it, you just contributed to your own downfall. But there is room for fund Barony, maybe fund their neighbor too. Like, just like give both of them. There's a relationship there is the biggest point. And they'll come crying to you.
What's good about Barony is that they don't need that many of your trade goods.
No, exactly. That's kind of my thing, is you get to scrape a little bit off the top.
Right.
You're doing your normal trades, getting some good money, and it's like, oh yeah, Barony, here you go. Let's do an even 2 for 2, or maybe a little bit better. Let's get some promissory notes moving around. There are options there.
And I'm going to say this, don't give Jolnar an inch.
Yeah.
They
don't need it.
No, they don't need it. They're
going to come to you with really good stuff and good options, and it's going to be enticing. That promissory note is no joke.
Yeah.
Especially for you. I mean, if they're going to get it and then get transit, like, that's a yellow skip. Like, they can effectively give you yellow skips that get you closer to quantum.
Right.
That is a huge deal. But don't take it too far, because they're going to get ERES siphons, and they're going to make a lot of money, and they're going to get past you.
I could see situations where trading racials with Jolnar is okay, but what I'll say this is never in the early game.
No.
Because the thing is, imagine this, a Jolnar with your racial, the ability to trade with anyone, they can start taking the trade strategy card, and they don't have the disadvantage that you have.
Right.
Like, someone else will take tech for them. Now, they are a 4-commodity race. They're able to trade with anybody.
Yep.
They've got money. They've got tech going out the wazoo.
Now they can trade that promissory note with any faction at the table. Oh my gosh. It's just terrifying. There are so many things that are not... there's so many reasons just not to give Jolnar an inch, and I highly recommend you don't. And the only reason I would is if it's like a turn 1, you know they're going to get transit diodes, and you can get something out of it. That would be like the one deal I make with Jolnar all game.
And be careful with Soul, too.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to be throwing like money at Soul if they're going to pull that Mechatol play that they go for.
Yeah.
You know, like...
You are a top race, and you don't need to be fueling the other top factions. Like, you just don't need to. You can run away with it if you're the only top dog or top cat in the game.
Yeah. Hit up the races that we've talked about, like, in these strategy guides as being, like, having a difficult time. Like, we've talked about a lot of races that like, man, you really need some trade goods round 1, right? Hit them
Those
up.
are the ones. Winnu, Yin.
Your Sardax, your Embers and Muat. Like,
they are ready for your help, and they will give you a lot.
And they need your help. That's the thing, is they need your help. Go after them. Don't help the races that already
are going to run away.
I mean,
with
unless you're just stuck, because that's the thing, is like,
sometimes you're the one that needs the help.
Right. Everything with this race can turn in on itself.
Yeah. All right, Hunter. Despite things turning in on itself, what makes us a superpower?
Having money
when it
matters is fantastic. Quantum Data Hub node, when you have the money for it, is that play is amazing, and nobody else gets to do anything like that. Yeah, to that extent. There's public disgrace, and then this basically.
Yeah. You do need Quantum Data Hub node, but it is so difficult for us to say you have to get it every time, and you get it as fast as possible.
Yeah,
you need to hopefully set yourself up in a situation where round 5 you can get Quantum Data Hub node, and round 6 win the game.
Right.
That's your goal.
Right.
And that works quite a lot.
Right.
But you don't need Quantum Data Hub node round 3, because that's going to actually spell disaster for you more often than anything else. So where are we looking for our victory? We have a lot of money. Maybe we have Quantum Data Hub node. How are we actually making this a strategy that wins us games?
So early in the early and mid game, we are going to make as much money as possible. We are going to bank trade goods. We're going to take the strategy card often. We're going to negotiate good trades for ourselves, and we're going to be frugal, actually, with our spending. We're not going to just go wild every round, pumping out giant fleets and being super aggressive. We're going to bank those trade goods. We're going to have them as our little insurance policy. And then when we get to the late game and people start getting uncomfortable with us, it's going to be too late, essentially.
Right. You got a lot of money already. You made such good deals early that people were like, I don't want to trade with Hakan, but man, what they're offering me is so juicy. I just got to take it.
Right.
And that gives you success in the late game when you need it.
Right.
And that's it. I mean, that it is.
And quantum data.
And then also quantum data hub node. It's so funny how it can be the easiest faction in the world to win with, and it can be one of the trickiest games of your TI experience.
See, the thing is, there's a lot of races that are like overall are not very good, and then like every once in a while everything clicks for them and they're just awesome.
They get a lucky game.
This is like the inverse of that.
Yeah.
This is like a race that everything on paper is like this race should be very, very good.
Yep.
But the variance, when Hakan, we've seen some nasty Hakan losses, and we've seen Hakan run away with it, and we hear stories of that level of variance too. We hear people in groups where Hakan is a force to be reckoned with.
So here's I think the biggest takeaway from our Hakan episode for you. If you play with a group consistently, learn how they're going to play against Hakan, and you can do a lot. If you know they're going to go easy, you know what you can do. You know you can make a lot of money and you can do really well. If you know they're going to be hard on you, then you got to play that. You got to play against that. You got to learn what you need to offer. You cannot play a good Hakan without knowing what your group is. If you're going to go play with strangers, those first 2 rounds are tester rounds. You got to talk to everybody and learn what they like, what they don't like, what kind of deals they want to see, what their feelings towards you are. You have to metagame like you wouldn't believe.
Right.
There's no faction that relies on learning their opponents more than the Hakan.
I think that's kind of the folly of this whole thing, and I hope you, everyone listening, I hope everyone got as much out of this as is possible. I think that last point is probably the most important, though. Hakan is so very dependent on the group. Yep. Just now thinking about it, it's like, if I was in a group where I didn't feel like I had to take trade every time, if I felt like I could make consistent money.
And I've seen that Hakan. I've seen it in completely different groups, separate of us. I've seen groups where Hakan very rarely took trade because other people would take trade and would go to Hakan first. They were so ready to trade with Hakan and do the same deals Hakan would have done anyways. Right. And you get that. And when you get that, it's a completely different faction.
God, and then I could take tech and construction and build PDS and play this like very defensive Hakan, which is what I wanted to play, and get quantum data hub node.
So remember, this strategy guide is coming from that perspective of we're planning for the worst.
Right.
But when it's the best, I mean, there's not even that much to suggest. Like, run away with it. Get all the tech you need. Get Quantum Data Hub node. You're going to get it all. And you're going to do great.
Honestly, the only thing I stand by in this entire guide is get Neural's good.
Yeah, get Neural first.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like, if you could probably just filter out all the other stuff. Because, like...
Get Neural and then just play Hakan.
Neural's good for Hakan. I think I'm down to stand by that. I wouldn't even if somebody was like, nah, not round 1. I want to get this other thing round 1.
Next week, the errata for this episode is going to just be so interesting because it's going to be people being like, you were completely wrong. This has worked for me every single time. And we're just going to be like, I bet it did. And you're right. And yep. Cool.
This is like, you know how Ghost of Creus, there's like this wild variance of like stuff that can happen? It's like if Ghost of Creus had a wild variance of like good things. Right. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like it's a wild variance of things that went well in a lot of different directions. Yep. And then like nothing, I don't know, I just feel like nothing is solid.
Yes.
I wish they had an advantage like Jolnar. Jolnar is such a good foil to them because it's like, here is a faction that just gets to do this. Right. They always get to do this, and it's never
Hakan doesn't always
change.
get to do it.
No, they don't. Well,
we got one more. We got one more to go.
Yeah.
Next week, hopefully.
Next week we're doing what? Have we done extra yet?
Yeah, we're gonna do extra again. We did extra.
We already did it once.
We did it once. We're gonna do them again. We're gonna do SAR.
So what is the one that we're
2
missing
weeks
then?
from now. No, you're right. There's one we're missing.
I'm not sure. So there's 16 races, right?
That's right. And this is we're done.
Oh yeah, we did.
We're done.
We did them all.
We did all the factions.
There's not really any other factions we got to do.
That's really great.
Huh.
I'm so proud of us.
That's interesting.
This was fun.
I swear. Oh, is it over?
It's over.
Show's over.
Show's over now. We did it. We did all of it.
We did all the...
Thanks everyone for joining Space Cats Peace Turtles. We're going to turn off the light.
Yeah.
We'll see you when the next expansion comes out.
Ba, ba-da-da-da-da-da, ba. Is that how
Is
it
that
goes?
Cheers?
Yeah,
Are
I'm
you
trying
doing
to do
Cheers?
Cheers.
Oh, well,
how does that go? Is that public domain? Can you throw that on here? Can you
definitely
do that?
not public domain.
Where everybody knows your name.
Oh, Hunter, no!
I think we've done the Cheers thing
Probably.
before, actually. That sucks.
Let's kick it.
Suck.
We're actually going to do some errata, so let's do some errata. We actually last week we were like, no agenda errata. Well,
Maybe we will.
Maybe we will. We're recording this long before we're going to record the errata, so like, I don't even know what you're going to get. Maybe it's going to be errata about how bad of a game Twilight Imperium just is.
Can I make a prediction?
Yeah, what?
Knob Daddy sends in an errata.
Yes.
And it says that you didn't pay your bill. And we're like, what bill? And then everything turns off. Errata from Knob Daddy shows over. Daddy says no.
Daddy says you did it wrong.
Daddy uses his quantum data hub node on us to switch podcasts with us. And now he's in charge.
Well, let's see if that happens.
All right, we'll see. You got to give us 3 trade goods. All right, so welcome to, it's been a whole week since we recorded the episode last week, and it's crazy.
We really cooked up some stuff for you.
Yeah,
we were dangling you by a thread, and you have no idea what to expect. What kind of errata could we possibly
How could we have
What
expected
have we cooked up? What have
the
Matt and
errata
Hunter got
that
this
we've
time?
gotten? Oh my God, it's so crazy. We've got 4.
4 whole questions.
We got 4, and they're about the episodes that they heard,
Yeah.
so like it's kind of...
pretty standard stuff.
Right. First errata's from Knob Daddy, and
Yeah.
he sent us...
It's just this weird... It's a piece of... Hold on. It's this piece of paper, and it just says overdue payment.
Yeah.
And...
This is really funny for us because it's been a week since we did the thing that you just heard.
Yeah.
And so, like, for us, it's
this is like a fun callback.
Yeah, it's like for us, it's a fun callback to last week, and for you, it's a callback to 5 seconds ago. So, I'll say there's no errata from me for the comedy show, the backyard comedy show I did on Saturday.
2 Space Cats came out.
2 Space Kitties came out. They drank free beer till they had to be kicked out because they were a mess.
Oh, man, they
Just
lost
kidding.
it.
That was not true.
Yeah.
That's not true. But thanks to the 2 that did come out, want more. Got more free beer. Got more free.
We'll talk about that
booze
later.
and stuff.
Let's quit wasting time. We've got from our agendas episode a little bit of errata from Gamer Dad Mitch, who says, "What if some new agendas were added to the game that had differing power levels based on how many votes that were cast for them?" I think this is the coolest idea.
I think
ever.
it's cool too.
They've got
dad. You know what I'm saying?
This is a good Gamer Dad.
Good dad.
Gamer Dad's got their own example just to kind of paint the picture for you. What about black matter research? The following happens based on the number of votes cast in favor of this agenda. 0 votes, nothing. 1 to 5 votes, every player voting for this agenda gets a free destroyer. 6 to 10 votes, everyone gets a cruiser. 11 to 25 votes, everyone gets a carrier. 26 or more votes, all war suns are destroyed on the board. So just the idea of the more everyone decides to commit to this thing, the more you might all get for it. And then, you can come up with crazy design within that spectrum of like, if you go crazy, if everyone votes all their influence in the game on it, what kind of crazy wild things could happen.
And I like it because it's like poker then. It's like you're upping the ante with each vote. And it's interesting that there really aren't any agendas like this. Like the fact that we all, in the game, we specifically vote like a number of votes and that you have to tap the planets for it. Like all of that mechanically is very specific.
Yes.
And it's odd that there really aren't any agendas that play with that.
Right. And what's, I love Gamer Dad's point too, at the end of his kind of comment, he says, it may actually encourage people to count out votes and vote with only part of their influence instead of an all or nothing, which is the more commonplace thing. I agree with this because anytime I vote like a random number, it's like, I'll do 6 for, I feel like I'm just being completely arbitrary.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense why I'm doing this, and like, maybe we'll all go, but if there's like, actually we're all trying to commit to some sort of goal, there's a reason for me to just do like let's all do 8. Okay, we'll all do 8. It actually makes sense for us all to have come to negotiate. Whereas normally it's like, well, we want it to be 4, but I'm just not going to vote anything, and now you have to vote all of yours.
Right, and like where you are in rotation matters more. The only other
Right.
thing I can think of is like there's that situation where it's like we really don't want Jeff to get this.
Yeah,
We hate Jeff.
exactly.
Jeff can't have it.
Right.
Jeff has 18 votes. All right, well I'll put in 6. Well, I'm gonna have to put in 6 too. Then you put in 7. All right, I'll put in 8. You know, like that.
Yeah, it just becomes a mess.
And it's like, hey, hate Jeff, and I'm tired of Jeff, and I don't want to play with Jeff anymore.
just sick of playing with Jeff. I think what I would just love to see out of more agendas is real choice. That's been the problem. That's the problem. We had other comments thrown at us that were just ideas of like the agenda deck might actually be kind of the weakest part of the agenda phase. The agenda phase itself is very exciting, but like most of the agendas we get to vote on are kind of like, well, maybe that doesn't matter right now. But my favorite example of a good, solid agenda is economic equality.
Yeah.
Because every time economic equality comes out, there's going to be,
It's
usually
never not interesting.
Right. There's usually a debate. Unless just like nobody at all at the table has trade goods, and it's like, yeah, of course we're going to get 5 trade goods.
Well,
but even then,
like,
sometimes 5 trade goods is worth a point, and not everybody has the point, and so you want to block people from. Yeah, it is always a thing that everyone needs to discuss, rather than like 4 people just being like, nah, I don't care.
honestly, if I'm like it, to bring it back to Hakan, which is I believe what the episode was about. I don't even
something
remember.
like that.
It's so long ago. But if I'm Hakan and for some reason I don't have any trade goods, like I spend them all or something,
Right.
And then this comes out, I don't know if like I really want everybody getting all these trade goods,
Right.
and then including me, and then it feeling like I don't have as much to stand on.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the do I kill my ground forces or do I get a bunch, like, do I kill half my ground forces and get a bunch of money or not? That's an easier choice usually.
Right.
But sometimes people are like, ooh, I don't know if the timing is right for me to lose a bunch. I love those agendas.
Yeah.
When the timing works out in that favor, where it's like everyone actually has kind of a difficult choice to make, and it's not just like, I want the point. No, I want the point.
Yeah.
Like, those agendas aren't necessarily
the only time I
as
don't
interesting.
like economic equality is when only one person has trade goods and they have a lot of them, so it just kind of feels like...
Or Mentak is in the game.
Right. Well, we had that happen.
I think it's a very weird agenda when Mentak
Yeah,
is in the
Mentak is
game.
very strange because, they get to then
They're just going to get a lot of money.
Yeah, it's very silly.
Our next one is not an errata necessarily from a specific person. Edawir was really the one to point this out, but we made reference to a post about Alex wanting to do a phased agenda, 2-phase or 3-phase agenda thing, and I said there was a post. I guess something got lost in translation where there was actually some confusion about whether or not we were
Ripping
stealing
off
this
Topaz
idea.
Dragon or whatever.
So Topaz Dragon 5676 has a post on Reddit about this idea. He had that idea the same time Alex had that idea. They were independent of each other, but Topaz actually spelled his out, has a really wonderful post on Reddit. You should go check it out, and it is about a split agenda deck that you can try at home. Alex has his own version of it, and you guys should check that out. I don't know that he ever posted it, but it's somewhere. I know we posted it on our Discord, but regardless, Topaz, we didn't steal your idea. It is a joke. Sorry that we mistranslated that.
We were being sarcastic about having, being like, because me and Alex, okay, so full disclosure, this is what happened. Me and Alex were getting ready for the episode, and Matt was like probably doing real work or something. And we were talking about this as an idea, and then Matt was like, that's a thing
right.
already. And then we just the way we are as people was we were just like sarcastically like, no, we just came up with this. This is our new thing.
We discussed that it was a reference to something off air, and then on air we're just like, wouldn't it be crazy if that was an idea? So that was really stupid of us to do. All right, moving on to last week's episode, Trading with Hakan.
Mm-hmm.
The precursor to this episode, the prequel, if you will. Hunter, give me what did Striker X Knight have to say?
Striker X Knight had this to say. My preferred approach with Hakan is to tax the one trade good by asking players for their worst action card. Then you can do equal trades with 2 or 3 players and acquire as many cards. This can then make Neural Motivator an easier miss. My preferred tech path is to pursue Dreadnought 2 first. I think, this is a very situational thing. I would say that I lightly disagree, and I would say that as a pretty light disagreement. I feel like I want good action cards. Like I want the good action cards that Neural Motivator might provide me, and it might not. So that's why I'm saying it's a very light disagreement between me and Stryker. However, I did want to include it because I did not think about this.
Yeah.
You could tax action cards in order
instead of a trade good.
Right.
You can replenish your commodities. Just give me a junk action card.
Right. And you know what, though? To be more charitable, I think oftentimes a lot of people will throw away action cards that aren't very good, but they're as an action. And to me, to have a bunch of as an action cards, even if they don't do anything helpful, is like always pretty great.
Well, and also there's just the theory that like that action card isn't good for that player or that faction or that timing,
right?
But they give it to you,
and
you might be able to it might be good for you, or you might be able to resell it to who it is good for later, right? I mean, you give it to the person who does need it, and they will pay a heavier price for it.
Yeah. The only thing that I think kind of scares me about it though is like the hand limit of 7, and also depending on what cards they have, that tax might be too. Like it might literally just be like, oh no, I can't do that because these are good action cards, and then like you're not really getting the trade.
It's a fun one to do sometimes. I don't think it can be just like your policy,
right?
It can't, because people will not do it all the time.
With the trade good tax, though, you're essentially taxing somebody something they will always have. And you could always go down too. Like you could be like, all right, I'll do an action card, and they're like, no, like okay, I'll do a trade, I'll do a commodity,
right.
Like
just change it up.
Stop you.
Just tax whatever you can get them to pay you.
yeah, exactly.
And that's why I like this idea. Adding action cards into that mix
for sure
helps a lot.
I like it.
From Board Game Geek, Falcone 1983 says, another thing that was sort of touched on, but I would like to hear your thoughts in more detail. How should other players change their play when Hakan is in the game? Does the trade strategy card become a more or less attractive pick? And I don't mean this in the way of boycott Hakan lest they get out of control, in the way that I tend to, or I used to say a lot, but more in the way of, how can I, as a non-Hakan player, profit the most from Hakan being in the game? This is a really great question, and I want Hunter to give all his thoughts. I want to preface this by just saying, I think our thoughts on this topic have evolved a lot. Yeah. We got a few things calling us out for how we used to talk about Hakan and be like, I don't think you should ever give them an even trade ever. And there was a point in time where I did believe that. But as we kind of talked about just in this episode we're finishing up today, I think that shifts over time. And I think we have now hit this new point. So Hunter, with all of our new information about how Hakan operates in a game, how should we be trying to profit off of Hakan?
Well, a lot of it has to do with, before I even go into my point, I want to say that I really like this question a lot, and that I think this is basically a whole episode worthwhile question, and we probably will. So right now, and I reserve the right to change what I'm about to say.
Definitely.
And we don't note that enough when
everything about Hakan, especially because like we've talked about them being so meta-based, everything is subject to change. But yeah, that goes for every faction. But Hakan especially, it's like things evolve per game.
Right. So, like we used to say, you try and get this whole table boycott thing going. And I think that's probably the most effective way to play against Hakan. However, the obvious drawbacks are this. It requires a lot of discipline. Are people all going to agree to do that? And I think what we learned, at first when we started doing this, it was like, this is doable. It isn't, though.
No.
That not across the board. There's going to be tables that do it, and there's going to be tables that...
Someone will always break.
Right. And once they break, then that's a problem. My new thing, and I say what I really mean is and I feel like we've dropped his name several times in talking about Hakan. David S. Knorr started doing this thing that I saw him do a couple times, which is he would court the Hakan, and essentially, I think we've already even described this in one of the episodes, but just to like refresh it real quick, the idea is that you get the Hakan to just trade with you. You give them like basically their minimum. You literally have them trade goods to you, and then you give some of them back, so that they have like, if they took the trade strategy card, then they'll have 9 and you'll have 3 or whatever, whatever it is that your commodities are. And the reason that I think this is actually a good thing to do is that you're keeping like the trade goods out of everybody's pockets. Basically, you're ensuring that like. Right now, I'm not of the opinion that you can prevent Hakan from making money. I just don't
Yeah.
I don't see it working out all the time. I think there will be times when you successfully do it, but I don't see it working all the time. So I think then the goal should be to mitigate the amount of money that Hakan is giving to other players. You want to be the only player that Hakan is trading with, because it also kind of lowers their meta influence over the whole table. People don't really have to think about them as much because you're really just the one in their pocket. So I believe right now that courting Hakan seems to be like the most, it's not even a way to like beat specifically Hakan. It's more about like mitigating
how you can win with Hakan in the game.
Right. And also, Falcone references like, what, like, should you pick trade? And I think, though, by the way we described it in the episode, picking trade, it doesn't really allow you to like completely mess up Hakan because they can always just like buy, as long as they're willing to kick the can down a round, which they might not be able to if it's like the last round of the game or whatever. Then it's kind of hard to stop them in that way because they don't have to ask for their commodities since they just get them. I think at this point I feel really unsure about how best to play against Hakan if you have trade. I know what it feels like to be Hakan and not have trade, and I feel like that's what we described in this episode.
Yeah.
But I wonder, and I think something to explore for what essentially, this is now just the precursor to an entire episode, but to explore how to beat them from the other side, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah, I think there is a viable strategy in letting them take trade, but being their only go-to person.
I mean, I think
work.
Of all the factions, Hakan is the one that we will watch evolve the most.
Definitely. Definitely. All right, and that's it. That's all the errata we're going to do. They were fairly simple episodes as far as kind of what sort of community interaction they brought out. I think we'll have a lot more errata to do next week on this episode than the previous two.
Yes, I
agree.
I
can't wait. And we're getting close to the end here of these first round strategies, or I guess
the show. Yeah, we're about to cancel the show.
Stop it. All right. So before we cancel the show, you can follow us on Twitter at SpaceCatsPod. Something we don't advertise very often about the Twitter that is fun. I know a lot of people don't have Twitter necessarily. A lot of people have Twitter. A lot of our listeners don't necessarily have Twitter. But I get questions pretty often about if we have maps posted anywhere of games we've played or whatever, if we have any sort of database. There's a database on the subreddit that is being trying to work on, and if you play a map, you should post it there just to have a collection of maps.
You're talking about the cartographer?
The cartographer, but then also, if you're ever just looking, you just want to build a map and you want to build something that's probably at least decently balanced, we post pictures of almost every live game we play of TI. Every time we play in person, I try to take pictures of like the game and progress reports throughout the game. So if you're ever just like, I don't want to build my own map right now and I just want to throw something out there that's already decently balanced, well, we've built multiple maps, and all of them I think we would consider close enough to balance to be fun. And hit us up on our Twitter and find those photos in our backlog, and you can play on one of our old maps.
Yeah.
And I think the community at large should just do that more often. Get pictures of your maps and post them. You can also follow us on Facebook, Space Cats Peace Turtles. Every week we post on the Twilight Imperium subreddit. That's where you can get errata like this into these episodes. Come and post and join in the discussion and bring up all these fun points, and you'll hear other people argue against you instead of just us.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. You can also join our BGG guild for the same thing.
BGG.
Board Game Geek Guild. We post links to that in all over the place. One of these days we're just going to have a website, and this rundown won't be like 2 minutes long. It'll just be like, go to our website, but we're really lazy. You can also email us, spacecatspieceturtles@gmail.com. That's where we submit our plays of the weeks and This Imperium Life's. Please contribute to our Patreon. We are 2 months away from Gen Con. It's getting super real.
It's getting very real.
And we can't wait. We're so excited to meet everyone who's going, and we can't wait to film this tournament, and that's what the Patreon is all about. So consider contributing in these last 2 months. I mean, we're going to continue the Patreon after, but we've been very clear about like everything before Gen Con. All the money we get through the Patreon is for Gen Con and is intended to make Gen Con better. So that's the goal. We've also got a Discord, and you can please rate us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else. It helps increase visibility about this game that we love. Hunter.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I'm going to throw more stand-up comedy dates at you. They're like the same ones from last week, so whatever. But Saturday, June 9th at 12 p.m., you can come to Yolks and Jokes at the Lamp, which is a bar connected to the Aladdin Theater in Portland, Oregon. It's a really cool show, brunch show. I will give you a mimosa if you come and say, hey, I'm a space cat, I'm a peace turtle. And then, more importantly, on Tuesday, June 26th, at the Helium Comedy Club in Portland, I will be competing in the Portland's Funniest Person contest. The show starts at 10 p.m. The tickets cost $10 unless you call the box office ahead of time and say, hey, I know Hunter Donaldson, and then they'll give them to you for $5. It is a contest, so please come out and support me. And if you think that I'm funny at the show, I'll say this. One of the Space Cats listeners, I'm so excited to say this, actually. One of the listeners that came out to the barbecue show, I won't name them, but I asked them, was this a lot funnier than Space Cat's Peace Turtles? And he said yes.
Yeah. I'm not funny. Matt's not funny.
No, I'm not funny in this context as much. That's what I took away from it. Do we want to...
we want to thank some people.
Yeah, I'll thank some people real quick. I want to thank Captain Scott. I want to thank Nicholas Lundberg. And I want to thank Chief Ulfsar.
Thank you for contributing to our Patreon.
Yeah.
Let's do a play of the week. Let's finish this. Let's finish this Hakan discussion with a really great Hakan story from the Grand Xinti Patriarch Asgi Thor.
Asgi Thor. As the Emirates of Hacan, I am tied at 7 VP with the Embers of Muat. The Arborek are at 6 VP, and the Ghosts of Krius and Clan Asar are trailing even further behind. The Arborek are going for a win play using Imperial to claim a public objective 2 in the action phase, and then another in the status phase. They have a sizable fleet, an extensive PDS-2 network, and 15 Latani Warrior 2s swarming over their homeworld. All seems lost, but I propose that we pool the galaxy's resources to launch a deep strike at the Arborek homeworld. I broker every available trade good, action card, and promissory note using my guild ships and arbiters. We flood the previously crippled Clan of Sar to create one of the greatest fleets ever seen. From almost nothing, the Sar built 2 War Suns, a fighter screen, dreadnoughts, and carriers full of troops. Using Warfare Primary, flank speeds, and a well-placed Ghost of Krius D wormhole, and the Ghost of Krius flagship wedged deep in the Arborek territory, we will launch the Clan of Sar Death Fleet using lightwave deflectors through the D wormhole, past the Ghost flagship, to strike at the heart of the Arborek. Oh my god, it should have been a Ghost one. The PDS-2 fire is brutal, but then the outmatched Arborek fleet retreats. Just as the War Suns and Dreadnoughts are charging up to annihilate the ground forces, the Arborek play Parlay to stop the invasion in its tracks. All the sabotages had already been used, leaving the Clan of Sar Death Fleet floating idly above the teeming Arborek homeworld. Not really a play of the week, is it? That's kind of just a fail of the week.
But wait, there's more!
Oh, whoops, there's more. The galaxy is resigned to being subjugated by their inevitable new plant overlords with all the resources and command counters spent, except for mine. For the final action of the match, I enter into my very first... my very first direct space combat. Hakan had done no combats.
Just paid everybody else
to do it. Handily crushing a small fleet on my border with my 5 pristine dreadnought. Yeah, they were pristine because they had done nothing. And the Wrath of Kinara. I score Unveil Flagship and watch as the Arborek player's huge grin quickly fades to a grimace as I am then first in initiative. And I also claim a secret objective and a public objective in the status phase to claim the galactic throne for the majestic Space Cats.
So there you go. Ignore everything we said in our guide and just use all of your money as a con to fund everyone else's war efforts and then win anyways.
Yeah, bank it and use it to lead that,
attack against the other leader.
Right, yeah. Use it to shut down whoever is going to win so that you can then win. That's another way to do it.
It's just an easy way to do it. Just do that.
I like that play of the week because it is so Hakan.
Yeah.
It is literally just like, I was playing Hakan. Let me tell you all the things other people did that I motivated them to do.
Alrighty. Well.
All right, well, love you, bye. That's what it sounded like you were going to do. It sounded like you were about to hang up the phone on your dad.
All right, Dad. Love you.
Hey, all right. Okay.
Oh, you're making baked beans? That's fun. That's cool. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I got to go. Yeah, I got to go, Dad.
I got to go.
All right.
I got to work.
Yep.
I don't have to work, but I tell him that.
I'll tell Fred you say hi.
Yeah, I'll tell Fred you said hi. Love you.
Thank you for listening to Space Cat's Peace Turtles. And thanks to Ben Prunty for the use of his music. You can find more at benpruntymusic.com and benprunty.bandcamp.com. Pax Magnifica, Bellum Gloriosum.